All right, I'll go. Um,
Okay.
we just had a flurry of great ideas, so and I wanted to hit it down a little bit. I think one thing that I was thinking about today is actually kind of what we're talking about is the evolution of mentally accepting change. Because for me specifically, and I've seen this with a lot of people that actually use habitual growth, one of the aspects that I think a lot of people who aren't in the achiever mindset or aren't typically like pursuing personal growth as aggressively as as others, I would say change is really hard. And
Hmm.
just the realization like things are never going to go your way, things are always going to be hard, things are like challenges don't have to be always viewed in the negative. And I know for me specifically, I've really seen my own personal growth just through my internal monologue alone. And I think that there's a lot to just talk about there because I know that's not me, but it's something that I feel like a lot of people deal with. And it's not the cliche statement of life is always hard, like choose your hard. Like we obviously love the work that Andy Frisella does. We respect kind of that statement and really what it represents. But I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with him or the true meaning of that still might struggle to grasp that entirely. And so, let's dive in a little bit deeper. Let's pull in some threads just around like what your experience has been of accepting change, of really driving at just understanding life is going to be full of challenges and how you cope with that makes a difference in your perspective, but then also how you leverage that moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I think for people there's two things that happen when they start to create change. I think one is the first hurdle, which you talked about, which is like even being aware of the inner dialogue that you start to have with yourself and how you learn to manage it, because I don't think it ever really goes away. It might become quieter, it might change. I think you actually grow mentally stronger as you're consistently executing day in and day out, creating new habits, building that confidence in yourself. Um, and then I think there's another misconception that people think once you've done something or built habits or built more resilience over a long period of time that you can never regress. And I think that catches people off guard, where they think, hey, I'm flying high, I've got this, I'm unstoppable. And then something takes them out because if it's not one thing, it's something else. But your ability to manage certain things from a mental perspective based on the habits that you don't know your weaknesses until you're in them. So you may have conquered and overcome and built resilience to certain things, and then something else comes out of the blue. And it's almost like you're starting over because the habits or the mental conversations you've had in your head have not been around that one specific weak or gap area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Give me an example of like something that you've dealt with that you've felt like you've stagnated or regressed.
Um, I would say maybe just like change in life circumstances. So I'm going through a phase right now where I felt like over the last like 4 or 5 years, I've built up really good routines, mental resilience, like become solid in how I handle things. And when negative things happen, I'm able to turn them into a learning opportunity or a growth opportunity or understand this isn't forever, just get my head down and keep going. Um, and now with Lauren actually leaving for college and thinking about this next stage of life, it's actually the emotional component attached with that that's kind of shaken it, because I can rationalize now not doing things that I would normally have considered non negotiable because these different emotions have come into play. And I think that's maybe where people get tripped up, is it's the emotional aspect that's associated with an event versus the event itself that's actually causing them to regress or to hear those voices a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like being aware, right? Like I had my routine, I know what's happening, I can recognize the emotions. Like I consciously now have to make a decision.
Hmm.
Like, yes, I recognize that. Yes, I might have to put some different priorities on my essential action list if I logically say this is where my time needs to be. But there's been plenty of days I want to be like, forget it. I'm just gonna watch movies and like sit on the couch and hug her and not do anything. And so for me, that was a very big, like eye-opening experience to be like, oh my gosh, like how did my emotions suddenly start running away with what I would have considered like a good habit routine that I've built?
Uh-huh. And let's go all the way back. Like when we started the habitual growth program, were there specific steps that you had to put in place to really get the momentum going to where you could recognize that? Because I think a lot of people may not, like, everybody has an internal monologue, but not everybody listens to it or even recognizes that it's there. And I know from my personal experience, that is something that I really had to deal with. Is I would, similar to you, it's like something would happen, my emotions, my mentality, my thought processes, whatever you want to call that, would kind of run awry. And before you knew it, it was 2, 3 days down the line. You're flustered, you're overexcited or over emotional or whatever it is. I'm much more aware of what that looks like now. But what steps, and I know you are as well, but like what steps or what were kind of those starting points as you were getting going that really helped you get to the point now where you can at least be aware and then take tangible action to make sure that you're not going down that path any further?
Yeah, I think I mean if we go all the way back, it was, and I think it's a point that people miss about lifelong learning. I think there's this broad umbrella that's painted that, it's like, oh, you should be a lifelong learner. And then people assume that's books, podcasts, like whatever it is. And actually, I believe there's a component of it that's just plain curiosity to understand why you do certain things and to learn from yourself through your own growth and development. And so when I think about starting our process, it was picking, even just one or two things that I said, I'm going to do today. And then when I would get to that moment, whether it was the first day of doing it or the 20th day of doing it, I tried to sit and listen and just understand, like, why do I not want to do this right now? Like,
Mhm.
what am I feeling? What are the other conversations that my mind is playing? How am I trying to rationalize not doing this?
Mhm.
And that's the learning that I think builds resilience, because if you really understand why, um, even just the conversations in your head are occurring, that equips you better in the future to mitigate or quiet them. So, for example, like if I go to the office, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And now it's become a non negotiable. Like if I haven't done my workout for the day, I'm still going to do my workout, right? But a long time ago, it would be I've been at the office all day. I'm really tired. I have to get to football practice with my son. Like, I'll just like maybe do a little extra tomorrow. And
Mhm.
really, what it was I mentally needed a break from the grind. It wasn't that I couldn't do the exercise or I was actually physically too tired. It was that I had been so mentally focused all day long that I just needed, I felt like I needed a minute to not have one more thing on my plate.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I was thinking about this ironically this morning as I was making some coffee. The really kind of our ability to make excuses for ourselves very quickly, not understanding and diving deeper into kind of the why, but then also just really like my newfound appreciation for embracing those challenges, but then going to bed tired, like mentally
Hmm.
tired. And if I look back at times in my life where I quite frankly had a good life. Like I was making a good income. I was, engaged in some bigger projects, but it really wasn't something that I totally fell in love with. And so I had a lot of what I would call downtime. Just mentally, I was kind of operating on autopilot. Versus now, there's quite a few things that I'm much more passionate about. Obviously, habitual growth is one of those, and trying to squeeze out more value for our users and our clients because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of satisfaction that goes in that, but that's a mental change of, and it is a different perspective change of hey, I'm kind of feeling tired. I'm going to go to bed now because I'm tired and I want to get good rest versus I really like, no, I've got more juice to squeeze and I'm going to get all my things done. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to build this integrity in myself, my self-belief. I'm going to go to bed still tired at the same time, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it in a way that makes a lot more sense because I'm accomplishing something and then going to bed mentally tired versus just drained from a long day, which is, in my opinion, kind of more time based than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great call up because I think more people than not are in that book. I mean, you and I have the blessing and opportunity in our life to be a part of something that we are incredibly passionate about and we really feel like is doing good in the world, obviously habitual growth. But I think there is a lot of people that wake up every day and they go, okay, well, I go to my job and I like it just fine. And they don't realize how draining it actually is from a mental perspective
Hmm.
with nothing that truly has meaning. And I think that's why you and I have chosen that tagline, live with intent, because if there's nothing that you're passionate about that you can focus energy intentionally on, like truly passionate about, you kind of live in this blah, like it's okay, but it's not great, and people get okay just being like, well, this is my life. And yeah, I go to happy hour on Fridays and I might go to the lake on the weekend and I take care of my kids, but they're missing something in the background. And if they sit long enough in it, they'll recognize that they don't feel as fulfilled as they probably could.
Yeah. And I think that's tricky, right? And that's kind of why I think the word fulfillment means something different to different people. I really like to dive in and think about my own experience and really what it took for me to get there because I used to think that I was fulfilled, right? I used to think that I had a really good life. And I did, right? By no means was there anything I truly could complain about. I just always had this underlying dissatisfaction with my status or where I was. One
Yeah.
thing that I still struggle with, but is really valid, and I know a lot of people deal with this, is the our fabricated time constraints that we put on ourselves, right? And I was listening to an Ed Milet podcast a couple of days ago, and he talks about how the 24-hour day is so archaic, and we really shouldn't go by that because we have technology and things like that that can move us forward much, much faster at accelerated rates, or you can accomplish things a lot quicker. And I think that's true, but I think the reality is, even if you don't have a corporate job or a 9 to 5 job or something like that, we still have this, hey, I need to be in bed by 9 or 10 p.m. I got to get up by 6. I've got to fit all these things in 30-minute, 20-minute, hour sections. And really, the days, for the most part, can be semi-fluid, right? I don't want to say
Hmm.
everybody lives in the same bucket and, you can just do whatever you want whenever you want. That's obviously not true. But there is a
Right.
lot of capability when people start to use kind of first principle thinking of, well, what really has to get done? What are my constraints? What are the walls I'm building up inside me mentally? What can I really get done? How do I prioritize that in the right way? And I think that really has opened my eyes to a lot more of breaking through the barriers of like, all right, well, I got to be in bed by, 10 o'clock. Here's 3 emails that I thought I could really get done. And, it's 9:45. So screw it. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm just going to get done. And then I sit down and I actually do something. And it's like, okay, well, throw 10 p.m. bedtime out the window. I just really need to get these 3 emails done. And what I find almost hysterically is the time that it takes me to sit down and write those emails, I'm like done by like 9:50, right? But I have this like bloated time schedule where I'm like, okay, 10 o'clock is right around the corner. I can't do this. I'll just wait until tomorrow. And it's like, well, if you just sat down and focused and really got it done, it takes like a third of the time for most things that you think it's going to, and you can hit that arbitrarily anyways, but you have to mentally really peel back those time constraints. That's one thing that I've really found helpful for me. Do you have anything like that? Do you see the same thing on your side?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you and I differ a little bit when it comes to schedules because I'm a firm believer of like 8 hours of sleep. Like I know how my body operates. And so it is part of my prioritization
Yeah.
of I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep. I'm eating healthy. So I have my buckets. That being said, because I know that about myself, I'm very intentional to prioritize. And so when it starts to get later in the evening, I still know what's on my list. And then I take more proactive focus to just get those done. So for example, yesterday, worked all day, was making dinner. I had like 30 minutes before I had to get to football practice. And I was like, well, I could waste these 30 minutes and I could just wander around the house and pick up or do whatever. But I was like, no, I need to get this survey built and this email drafted and before, I leave to go. And so just knowing that I put that time block there, like, okay, I'm going to do this right now and I'm going to do what it takes to get it done. Like you were right. Like it took me about 20 minutes and I was able to get it out the door and it was great.
Yeah.
But too often, you're right. It's like we look at this time period and we're like, well, it's only 30 minutes. I might as well just do something, or it's almost bedtime. I'll just finish the show. But if you actually prioritize the actions that you need to move forward and not let that gray, like time-ish thing come into play, like you can accomplish more than you think you can. And I was done with everything, I think, by like 9:30 last night. It was great. So
Yeah. Yeah. You got a little extra sleep then. Because you need it.
yes. My beauty sleep.
Well, hopefully these are some helpful tips and tricks and just thought processes for people to get them really thinking. Start the starting point is the biggest barrier for a lot of people. And then obviously maintaining that just awareness of your internal monologue and really what is forcing people to take certain actions. And not everything is the same for everybody, right? And there's different circumstances, there's different environments, which I want to talk about next time, because you and I tend to get the same kind of what I see as a compliment, maybe even if it's not given as a compliment, of just like, how do you deal with so much?
Yeah.
Because it does go back to a lot of the aspects of what we're talking about here. And I think that's another aspect of where people start to chip away. These are little steps, but that's why habitual growth is set up in the way that it is. It is daily actions. It is several actions done during a day. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a month or 2 months or 3 months, but we are 3-4 years into this at this point, and now I feel like we're really just starting to figure this out and taking that long-term view and sharing the knowledge and our experiences we continue to go along and really help people, just if nothing else, get started so they can start to figure out some of this. What works for them alone is just really powerful. So appreciate the insight that you shared today.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I actually just want to touch on one thing because you were talking about backhanded compliments, and I think that's a great watch out because um, it actually happened to me last week, and I want people to be aware, especially our user base that I would consider high achievers, very focused on success, and sometimes there is not an external appreciation for how much you can actually do and how efficiently you can do it. And I was literally sitting in a meeting and last week, and someone said, maybe you could just do a little less. I was like, no, I don't think I can. Like I have learned through this process like how to prioritize and be maximally efficient and to move things forward. And I have to, and it created an awareness for me that like I probably do stick out like a sore thumb in a lot of areas because of that. I don't see it just in my own little world, but I think I do. And so I think that's just a call out for people because one, like if you get that, like awesome, keep going. You're on the right path, but don't let that derail you as a negative. Like actually take that as a compliment because I think that's part of like come back and be in the norm with everybody else where we're trying to get people to live in an elevated manner, raising their own standards and doing things better overall.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great insight and a great share to round this out. So appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Sounds awesome.
All right. Bye.